Ask Reddit by Blundruss. What's the worst case of alcoholism you've personally witnessed? My mom. At her worst, she was drinking right when she woke up, and right before she went to bed. Her body was rotting and she smelled horrible. Her toenails fell off, and she was throwing up late at night. I could hear it while I was doing homework. She'd pick me up from school completely loaded. She eventually stopped trying to drink on her own, and induced a seizure. She was on the couch while I was at school, and knew that if she laid back on the couch, the seizure would kill her. She didn't want my sister and I to come home and see her dead, so she called the paramedics. She's been sober for 7 years now thanks to AA. She's incredibly healthy, and gained back so much physical strength. She does CrossFit and went back to school to become an addiction specialist. Recovery is possible. That is an epic triumph for your mom. Tell her this random stranger is proud of her. My husband. He went to at least 9 inpatients and 4-5 outpatient treatments and was not able to quit. He would leave the hospital, go straight to the store and get shit-faced. He lost everything. He had 2 master's degrees, went from making $200K to living with his brother in a shack. Lost his children, we got divorced and he lost most of his friends. He committed suicide because he just couldn't stop. I was and am still devastated. I'm so sorry. Loving someone that is so smart and talented and watching them lose it all is devastating. Your husband sounds like my brother. Wish I could just post my brother's autopsy report. He died almost exactly a month ago, found dead in his own bloody vomit and shit, with 4 Mallory-Weiss tears in his esophagus from constant vomiting for several weeks. He had been drinking straight Listerine because he'd misplaced his ID and no one would sell him booze. We found 20+ empty bottles of it in his bedroom, several of which were covered in and slightly filled with bloody stomach contents. He had the worst case of gastrointestinal bleeding the coroner had ever seen. He literally bled to death from the inside. And as he lay there dying what I can only imagine was a horrifically painful death, he was still drinking the fucking Listerine. I loved my little brother very much. I hope this post doesn't come off as disrespectful. I only tell his story because I just want others to reach out for help. Self-medicating with alcohol for anxiety and depression is a very slippery slope. I'm so very sorry for your loss. I hope you have the support of friends and family around you. I had a friend who kept his hands under the table during meetings at work, so people wouldn't see them shaking. He went straight to rehab after he got fired and has been doing fine for about a decade. My recent ex-fiancée has lost 2 amazing jobs in 5 years. I don't believe she was drinking on the job, but the characteristics that come with alcoholism were there: self-centered, less than truthful, and argumentative. She doesn't drink every day, so she refuses to believe that she has a problem with alcohol, despite 3 arrests for DUI and an unstable work history. In my opinion, the worst alcoholics are the ones that hold on to their delusion that they have it under control until it ruins their lives. Edit. Typos. My mom drank herself to death. Multiple surgeries, multiple complications. Basically lived the last 2 years of her life in hospital. She was a high-functioning alcoholic. Most people would never know. She was never an aggressive drunk. Never abusive. Forgetful. Sad sometimes. Very caring and would help anyone. But man, could she drink. She was 5 feet nothing and maybe 7.5 stones, 100 pounds, wet through, but she could drink a bottle and a half of gin every day, and I mean every single day. Never nasty and always kind. Your pain and your clear love for your mother has me in tears. Hugs to you. A family friend of mine lost everything because of his alcohol addiction. His wife divorced him, took their kids, and moved away from him. He lost his job, and was close to losing his house, having spent all of his money on alcohol. His bank account was dangerously low, and he was in awful condition. He didn't eat, only drank alcohol, and would rarely have water. My dad stepped in to help him as one of his best friends, isolated him from all alcohol, stayed in a hotel with him, talked through his problems with him, and forced him to go back to rehab. He's doing much better now, but alcoholism can ruin your life. Your dad literally saved his life. We need more people like him. I used to be a defense attorney, so here's 2. 1. I once had a client who I was representing on his 13th DUI. 2. Had a client whose back was .47 and she seemed totally fine in the video report. Cop was shocked it was that high. This means she drinks so much that she was normal at a blood alcohol content that would put most folks in the hospital. Ugh, this feels so Wisconsin. Headlines like arrested for 13th DUI are way too common here. I had a roommate who was a huge alcoholic but also super frugal, so he hated wasting shit. Well, his alcoholism got so bad he was drinking like half a handle of vodka a day. Dunno where he got the money, but he somehow still managed to pay for the rent every month and wasn't much a bother, so I left him alone. It was sad, but all he really did was sleep, so I just lived with it hoping he would get help. Well, he started throwing up a lot, and I guess it was usually after he tried taking a couple shots, so he would throw up into a huge cup then drink it back down until he could keep all the alcohol down because he hated wasting it. It was fucking horrifying to watch, and I decided it was time to go myself at that point. Dunno what happened after that, but I hope he is better. Fuck, that's disgusting. Drug and alcohol counselor here. Alcohol is, in my view, one of the worst substances to get addicted to. We regularly deal with people resorting to drinking hand sanitizer. Others will drink 5 liters of cask wine a day. They are aware they are dying, but I suspect at this point it is a form of protracted suicide. It absolutely is protracted suicide. My best friend had to stay sober for 30 days before his eligibility for a liver transplant. He failed the blood test and was denied the new liver. He died within a month. He was in his early 40s. My wife works on a liver transplant floor, and the amount of PPL who go the 30 days and get the transplant they end up back there because they started boozing again is insane. My aunt was hospitalized for cirrhosis of the liver. The day she was released, she headed straight to the bar. She was dead in a week. Had a friend who would chug about 2/3s of one of those 1.75 liter bottles of vodka before heading into the bar or club to start drinking. Disaster usually followed. Holy shit. That's an insane amount pre-game with. Was he a big dude? My grandfather was homeless from alcohol and drank antifreeze multiple times. He died slowly because it destroyed his nervous system. As a kid it was scary. Made my dad's alcoholism look like NBD. Not as bad, but my dad would resort to stealing rubbing alcohol when he couldn't afford beer or vodka. He has cirrhosis and still going. Don't talk to him at all anymore. The 39-year-old in my hospital GI center right now that has 0 blood, 0 clotting factors, yellow skin and eyes, liver enzymes off the charts. He is not expected to leave the hospital alive. It's pretty sad. Had a 37-year woman who spent weeks in force same. Basically feeding her transfusion to keep her alive. Missed her daughter's high school graduation before dying of massive variceal bleed. Used to drink 15 beers a night at least 3 times a week. My liver started to shut down, gout was starting to develop. I'd wake up massive amounts of pain in my legs and feet, had been doing that for 20 years before it got real bad. I'm 2 years sober and never been healthier. Hit the gym almost every day. Eat right and take my vitamins. You gotta want it, but you can get sober if you just try one step at a time. This is the first response I've seen where the answer is me. I'm glad you said something. I'm 19 months sober myself, but I don't really feel like telling my story here. A friend of mine told me a story about one of his previous roommates that I'll always remember. The guy would drink straight whiskey in his room all night and day on his own. He didn't even have a TV or music or anything. He would literally sit in his room in a chair and just drink looking at the walls. His bed had cigarette burn all over the sheets and blankets. My friend lived on the story above in a 2-story apartment and was terrified of this guy burning the house down with no way to escape. I am an alcoholic, but I couldn't imagine being so troubled you could just sit in a room for years without any form of entertainment or company, just drinking with your own thoughts. What happened in this guy's past, I wonder? Poor bastard. Wild. One of the things that helped me quit was getting drunk once with no external stimulus. Just booze. It's not a fun drug. Realized it brings absolutely no positives besides temporary numbness of issues that I need to be working through sober. I used to babysit 4 kids during my early teen years, and their dad would come home stumbling drunk at like 4 p.m. He and the wife were separated, and one day he was supposed to have the kids and he got drunk and forgot. The little girl called me on the phone and was like, "We need a babysitter," and she was maybe 10. Sad stuff. Awesome story. My mom, also an alcoholic, until my dad threatened to leave her and take me with him. She quit cold turkey and stayed sober till she had a heart attack at 73. Miss her every day. My neighbor was an alcoholic and his wife always tolerated it for whatever reason. I guess one day he got nasty with her and she drew a very thick line in the sand for him. She ended up taking 2 weeks off work while he detoxed. Apparently he still keeps his ginger ale under the kitchen sink because that was where he kept his stash. One of my clients needed a liver transplant at the age of 33. I'm surprised they could get one. Many transplant centers require that people who destroyed their organs due to substance abuse be sober before they became terminally ill. My friend's ex-brother-in-law was denied listing for that reason. My old neighbor. Super nice guy. He was retired. Woke up at 5 a.m. every day. Poured straight vodka into his coffee cup. Drank multiple over the course of the morning. Continued all day and night. Hadn't seen him in a while. Finally saw him outside with his girlfriend. His skin was neon yellow. I said, "Your liver is failing. You need to go to the hospital." His girlfriend said she's been telling him the same thing, but he refused to see a doctor. He died not long after that. I worked in substance abuse treatment for years, but one of the worst is actually a personal friend and former roommate. We partied a lot together in our early 20s, almost 40 now, and he had actually always seemed like the one who had his shit together more at that time. I left the States to get myself together, but we stayed in touch, and for years I thought he was doing pretty well. Turns out he'd almost drank himself to death in his parents' basement the last few years after a nasty breakup. He was recently hospitalized and has alcohol-induced early dementia among other issues in his late 30s, and man, it is hard as fuck to see. Alcohol-induced dementia? I didn't know this was a thing. And only in his late 30s? Yikes. I've got 3 examples. One is I knew a guy who drank as soon as he would wake up, so he woke up and no alcohol in the house except an old half-full 40 bottle of beer filled with cigarette butts. He drank it. 2. My childhood friend's mom, who would drink herself to sleep every night. My friend at 8 years old would clean her mom up the vomit and pee, then pick her up and put her in bed. That 8-year-old was very abused and neglected. Once she walked into the kitchen and her mom unintentionally put her cigarette out in kid's eye. 3. My old neighbor, he'd pass out in his yard and pee all over himself. When not drunk he was a good mechanic. He would use all his money on pop-off vodka. He drank 2.5 gallons a day. He never paid on his utility bills, so would sit in his house with candlelight and drink. A man asked about buying his house and he said, "If you got 10k in cash, sure." So he got the cash and wandered around town drunk, dropping money. He got himself a hotel room and liquor and fell off balcony and died. This is the most grim thread I ever seen on Reddit. My neighbor, Serbia, no one to my knowledge knew his actual name. He lived in his trailer and left only to buy fast food, cigarettes, and vodka shooters. He drank the shooters so he could better pace himself. His did no cleaning in his house and had mice and ants as roommates. He was a musician. but he claimed alcoholism took his ability to play away. Apparently he was an accomplished accordion player. He had a professional one in his house. I used to visit him, bring groceries, and clean when I could. Interesting, but sad character. I used to use those shooters in the hopes that I would pace myself, too. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work, at least not for long. Myself. Sober now for almost 3 years. My mom was a high-functioning alcoholic all my life. After my dad died of cancer, she went completely off the rails. She fell and hit her face off every step, needing 37 stitches. She ended up getting in her hot tub and blacking out. She drowned and was in the water for 3 days before she was found. She was only 52.